Okay, first of all, I'm British. We don't cry, we simply sip tea and we keep buggering on. As you can imagine, I'm absolutely devastated. My Alienware M18x top of the range laptop has been absolutely destroyed, and obviously I'm destroyed as a result. But what's interesting is that this video, the reason I'm doing this video is because it's actually less about what happened to my laptop and more about what happened when it came to making that all-important insurance claim. And so here she is, my poor baby. She's looking extremely sorry for herself, and I must say it does sadden me to see her in this condition with flappy bits and dented bits, broken bits, and beautiful, beautiful laptop as well. The Alienware M18X, in my opinion, the best one they'd ever made, and it was their flagship. It was no expense spared. 18-inch screen, dual graphics cards, you've got rated hard drives, i7 processor, you've got Blu-ray player, every port you could possibly imagine. And it's one of those things where they just kind of don't make it like that anymore. And so it's really, really, a bit disappointing that she's no longer with us. And the reason I'm bringing this video to you today, though, is more to do with the fact that the insurance company, when it came to making a claim, it ended up being a little bit of a war. And I don't know about you guys, but I've never really made an insurance claim before, so I didn't really know what to expect. And when it kind of ensued, I did wonder to myself, how many other people get shafted by their insurance companies, perhaps because they don't fight back, or they don't know how to, or don't know that they can. And so for me, it was about, if there's something that I can help you guys with today in my story going forward, if you've got, sort of specialist, expensive equipment like, like this kind of a thing, it can really become a problem when it comes time to calling them up and asking for their help in your time of need. And you start to realise that things aren't quite as simple as you thought they might be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a brief look at the actual damage close up and give you an idea kind of how it happened, and then I'll get into the juicy bits and I'll let you into some of the communications between me and the insurance company. It's quite funny, so stay tuned for that. I wasn't actually here when it happened, and it wasn't me. The person who did it is still alive, just to put you at ease. Nobody died in the dropping of this laptop, but obviously the Alienware died herself. From what I can work out, there's been a spillage of some kind, and then there's been an attempt to wash it or clean it and then put it out to dry, so to speak, on top of a wall in the sun, and fell off said wall and bounced on the concrete. So that's essentially what I think's happened. I found various bits of plastic on the concrete on the floor, so I kind of know where it happened following my internal investigation, let's say. And the problem is, this is more than 5 kilograms worth of laptop, and so in terms of its kinetic energy when it's hitting the ground, that's a lot of energy is being dissipated in the corner there. And I'm not sure if you can see that the motherboard underneath actually extends here, and it's cracked the motherboard inside, which is obviously catastrophic. So, and you can see it's all buckled where the Blu-ray slot is. So that's caused the screen to crack internally. The glass is only very slightly split, but you can see the liquid crystal inside the display has been shattered. And this side doesn't look too bad, but again, you get round the back and you'll see here it's obviously bounced or something on the concrete. This whole thing, this has come off as well in the collision, so that's not ideal. That's the main damage. Let's get on to the let's have a look and see what happened with the insurance company then. In the interest of comfort, I decided I'd do this bit in the lazy boy chair. And also, I've got my iPad, so I've got a few notes This isn't the first time I've recorded this, and it's just taking way too long to do this video. But anyway, it's not that it's complicated, but it's important to get it right, particularly because if you're like me and you've never made an insurance claim before, then this could be extremely valuable to you. There's definitely some stuff in here to take away from it. So, you know, it's important for me that I can help as many people as possible to not end up on the losing end of it, right? I mean, that's ultimately what I was looking at. So I've broken it down to a few. It's nothing too dramatic, but, you know, there's a few nuggets in there which, like I say, could be useful to the right people. So I'm going to give you a bit of a brief background first of all, so you understand sort of how things work in the UK. And so the idea, so let's get started. Basically, when I first called the insurance company, which is Aviva, a couple of years ago, you know, to set up the insurance policy, and they ask you, you know, do you have any items that are valued above £2,000 as an individual item? And so I sort of had a thought about it. I don't have that many things. You know, I've got the camera, the Alienware M18x. I put $5,000 into that when I bought it. So that was definitely what they call a listed item. And so there wasn't too many things, but there was definitely a couple of bits and pieces. There's other things like my water-cooled PC. That's a custom build, which I sort of custom built. So it's difficult for that one because you wouldn't be able to list it as a single item, right? But, you know, because it's a custom build, it's like, well, the motherboard's not going to be more than £2,000. The CPU on its own wouldn't be, do you see what I mean? So it's like as it adds up. So you need to be careful because anything that's a single item that's more than £2,000, you have to specify. And so that's what I'd done on a few items. And as a result, you obviously pay more per month on your premiums, the more items that you list of value. So, you know, if I had like a couple of bars of gold or something like that, or some expensive jewelry, then of course that can become quite a lot of money per month in your insurance if you're listing all of these expensive items. So for me, not too bad, only a couple of things. So that was the premise of it. And so of course, you know, the accident happened. I'm covered for accidental damage. And so I hadn't really considered it at first. As a friend of mine said, oh, you know, maybe you can get insurance. And I don't know why I hadn't really thought of that as something on insurance, but yeah, and it was a valid point. So I thought, well, let's first of all, I called them up and said, you know, is it covered? Is it something that I claim for? You know, because it's an accident. Does it have to be like stolen, or is it, you know, even if it's just accidentally damaged? So they confirmed that yes, it was covered, not a problem. So send us an email with the specification of the item and the and some pictures, right? Some pictures of the damage. So I did that, and I got a phone call. Like a couple of days later from Aviva, and what they said was that because the item was non-standard, it was having to be passed over to a third-party company. And so at this point, it's been passed to a company called BValue, I think it is. And what they are is they're like a third-party outfit, and they're like sort of technically savvy, allegedly, right? Allegedly, they're technically savvy, so that anything that's sort of like non-mainstream, they can go off and they can try and find some kind of an equivalent, which is the idea with the insurance, is they find you an equivalent match to your item. And so it would have been easy, you know, if you've got like an iMac Pro or something, yeah, you can just, you know, you just say, I've got an iMac Pro, right? It's easy peasy. They go on Apple, iMac Pro, what's the latest iMac Pro that they're selling? Bosch, you know, similar spec. If it's an i7 or an i5, that's the spec. So you would, you know, choose it accordingly to match the spec. And since the M18X is a very kind of high-end, it was the flagship, it was almost experimental, you know, when Alienware brought it out. And so it's very, very difficult to match. Okay, so I get that, right? So they sent it off to this company, and they said, oh, you'll just have to wait for them to, you know, send you some kind of a reply. And so what happened was, a few days later, I get this email from these BValue people, right? So at this point, I'm not really dealing with Aviva anymore, okay? This has been passed over to these BValue people. And so anyway, this is what they say to me, right? Good afternoon. I'm writing to you regarding your recent insurance claim. We are now in a position to offer a proposed they've spelt proposed wrong, a proposed settlement to your claim. Please ensure you review they've done it again, proposed settlement, and contact us on blah, blah, blah to advise if you are happy to proceed or respond to this email with your queries, right? Please note, you have an excess payment of £200, which we will need to collect or deduct before delivery is arranged. Now, that can change depending on your policy. My policy, it's, I pay the first £200 of any claim. So, okay, fair enough. So the following replacement will be coming in the form of a cash settlement. So that was one thing, as I wasn't sure of whether they send you an item or, they buy it and they send it to you, or whether it is just indeed, they work out a value and send you the cash value. At this point, I wasn't aware, so that was interesting. What they're proposing was an Alienware 17. Right, now, it's not just that's an Alienware M18x, it's an entirely different range. Okay, this is anyway, so £1,800. Right, now bear in mind, I spent $5,000 on that. Yeah, 4 or 5 years ago. And it was an import from America as well, because the spec that I had was a super top-end spec that I ramped up that they didn't even offer in the UK. So those that were savvy might have noticed in the earlier segment that the keyboard is actually an American keyboard, not a British one, right? But anyway, that's by the by. It was, top-end when I bought it. I got a big bonus check from, I was a senior marketing manager for a big company, and I got a bonus for doing a good job, and 50% went to the tax man and the other 50% went to Alienware. So, and obviously I can justify it as well because of the work that I do, video production, 3D animation, rendering and stuff like that, and graphic design and marketing that I do for clients. So of course, I can justify that investment. And 4 years later, it's still a stonking performer. So, it's worth making a good investment because it can last you much longer, right? So anyway, they sent me this Alienware 17 hunker whatsits, and it's like 1,800 quid, £1,800, which is probably like $2,100, $2,200. Now, I had a look, and that is literally, it's like finding the cheapest laptop you could find with the word Alienware on it, which I mentioned in my email in a minute. And the Alienware 17, first of all, it's not even the same range, right? When I bought the M18X, they actually were selling the M17 as a laptop, as a gaming laptop then, right? And where I was spending about $4,800 on this, it was actually probably about $2,800 for the 17 version, right? So it's a completely different animal. Now, if I'd bought the M17 then fair enough, they're giving me this now to replace it, but that's not the case. But the problem, you see, is that at this point in time, Alienware don't actually sell the M18X anymore, right? So, £1,800. So the first thing is I'm thinking to myself, well, that's nonsense anyway, because what's the point in me paying out extra for having an item that's worth more than, that's valued at more than £2,000 when you're only going to give me 1,800 anyway, right? I might as well have not been paying the extra money, and I might as well have not had it listed as an item if you're not even going to honour the minimum value that it would be, I've been paying for. So it says the following replacements will come in the form of an Amazon voucher. So what they've also done here is they've included they've proposed a separate SD card reader and also a Blu-ray drive, because the new Alienware laptops don't actually have an optical drive in it. Yeah. And because they have to offer an equivalent, it means that if it doesn't have an optical drive, you would have an external optical drive to make up for it, right? Now, this SD card, one thing to note here, this SD card reader that they're going on about is on the back of a conversation I had when I called them up, these BValue guys, just to give them the brief rundown. When I called them up, I explained the fact that the thing about the M18X was that it has a slot on the side, a PCMCIA, which I use for my video camera's memory card. I can plug it straight in, and it's super, super high speed transfer. So if I'm doing a film shoot and I'm with a client, for example, it means I can, we can take a tea break, I can whip out the camera, I can make a backup super quick, and I can even review the footage, because obviously it's got the performance, it's got the nice 18-inch screen, so it's got the performance to be able to show footage and maybe do a little bit of basic editing while I'm on set, right? So that's the plan. And anyway, so the new Alienware laptops don't actually have the same port on the side. So again, they're proposing this memory card. Now it's by the by, because the memory card they're suggesting here for 14 quid, right, which is like 20 bucks, doesn't even actually support the memory card, the S by S, SXS cards they are, right? So that's complete nonsense for a start, right? So anyway, I'm thinking I'm not having that, right? Alienware 17. All right, fair enough. If I'd bought an Alienware 17 like a couple of years ago, fair enough, replace it with that, right? But that's not what I bought. It's not what I bought, right? This is flagship. They don't even call it a gaming laptop. It's a desktop replacement, right? And the reason it's a desktop replacement is because it's 5 kilos, right? And the power supply, I'll show you in a minute. The power supply is ludicrous, right? And the reason I'll show you in a minute is because I sent a photo to them to show the difference between a standard 17-inch laptop power supply and the M18x power supply, just to put it in perspective. So anyway, I'm like, oh man, I'm not having that. So I sent them an email back with my first reply to their nonsense suggestion. So next, I'll go through the email that I sent them. I'll just mention quickly, when I first got that proposal from them for this Alienware 17, I called them straight up and spoke to a lady for about like an hour or something and kind of pled my case. And she just said, you know, you need to reply back to the email and make it as detailed as possible. So that's what I did. Now, I'm not going to read it all because it's quite long, and I made it quite long on purpose because, you know, like she said, make it detailed, and I didn't want there to be any excuses. So I did a reasonable amount of research, and at this point, you see, I hadn't really looked at what was even an equivalent. I guess I hadn't really thought what I'd even replace it with, to be honest. So after, in the meantime, before I got that reply with the proposal, I'd gone onto Alienware and I checked out what their latest range was, and I looked at their desktop replacement range, and it was the Area 51M, which turns out it didn't even come out that long ago, like maybe January or something, January 2019, and that looks to be like the most equivalent because, you know, it's like got the same magnesium alloy case, it's got the same CPU, replaceable CPU and graphics card options like this had, and it's got things like overclocking of the CPU, which again, you have the option of that of this one. So it was all, you know, and of course it's more considered a desktop replacement rather than a gaming laptop, which again is what this is. And so it's quite obvious to me that the Area 51M was the equivalent in the range of the M18X for modern day. And so this was the email that I sent back to them. And I mean, I wasn't in the best of moods, but I was at least trying to be, you know, reasonably jovial, let's say, right? So here we go. I've listed at the top just some of those things I mentioned to you about the match between the Area 51M with the desktop replacement versus the 17M, which is slim, lightweight, cheap gaming laptop. I say cheap, you know, compared to the Area 51 and the M18X when it came out, and drawing the equivalence between the fact that the Area 51M and the M18X have both got magnesium alloy cases, the 17M is just a plastic case, and again, so I've listed that to make sure I'm drawing the equivalency between that range. So this is how I start. Wow, I'm super sorry, but that is a complete and total insult. I can only assume you're entirely unfamiliar with the Alienware series, which in all fairness, they're not exactly mainstream, so I guess I can forgive you. With a winky face, so I'm, you know, I'm being nice. I'm smiling when I say it. Okay, so first of all, just so we're clear, what you've proposed is a cheap plastic cased M17 bottom end gaming laptop. In fact, it looks more like you've just tried to find the cheapest possible laptop with the word Alienware written on it. Now, it's true. I mean, this Alienware 17, it was on Currys. The link they gave me was currys.co.uk, which is like a white goods store. So first of all, I'm not buying an Alienware laptop from anywhere apart from Alienware for a start, right? And so not only that, but the Alienware laptop that they were suggesting is like got a 1060 graphics card in it, which would barely be the equivalent to my dual graphics cards in that, yeah? So anyway, sorry, there must have been some confusion, as I wouldn't have even needed to be paying out extra for specified items on my insurance if I'd owned a sub £2,000 plastic cased M17 bottoming gaming laptop. So my point being is that, you know, it's no good I'm paying extra money per month based on an item, you know, for more than £2,000. And so if you're offering me 1,800, well, it's not even above the threshold of the £2,000 anyway. So I might as well have not even been bothering paying for it as a listed item. That's my view of it. So I put there, you know, it's not a bottom. I didn't buy an M17. I bought a flagship magnesium alloy case M18x desktop replacement laptop. It's a completely different range of products altogether. So, and I even mentioned the fact that when I bought my M18X, you could buy the M17 at the time for about half the price. Yeah. So, you know, so if I bought an M17, yeah, fair enough. You know, I wouldn't have a problem, but that's not what I bought. So then I go on to say, ultimately, I guess what I'm saying is that suggesting the bottom of the range M17 gaming laptop is like trying to replace a £300,000 Lamborghini with a £70,000 Tesla and hope that no one notices, or replacing an iMac Pro with a basic MacBook while keeping a straight face. And I go on here to say about, you know, why the laptop's important to me because of how I use it for work and things like that. And then we go on to a segment here where I'm just sort of talking about some of the issues with like the SSD, the RAID that I've got, which obviously this one that they're recommending hasn't got, and the thing with the slot for the memory card, and the fact that this little memory card reader just isn't going to be up to scratch. And I end up with basically saying, this is how I end it. The Area 51M appears to just about be the equivalent to that, whereas the M17 not even close to the point of literal facepalm. Like I said earlier, iMac Pros versus MacBooks. So anyway, I think you get the picture, and admittedly it did turn into a bit of a rant, but let's face it, you'd expect the same response from the person who opened his curtains in the morning and suddenly saw a bottom-of-the-range Tesla sitting on his driveway, where once a pride and joy Lamborghini once sat. Winky face. I trust this email finds you well. I apologise for the sheer length of it, but the super cool lady on the phone said to make it as detailed as possible, so there it all is. Cheers, me. So that was what I sent back to them, thinking that will show them. How wrong was I? How wrong was I? So I'll get into the reply that I got back from them. I must admit, when I first got this email, well, let's just say, check it out. Right, you see the red, right? I'll put it up on the screen. This is copied straight from the email I got, right? I haven't coloured it. This is them, right? So my email I spent about an hour putting together because, of course, you know, I was doing research and making sure I had the right equivalency with the specification, things like this. They've literally replied back to that and then chopped into each of my sort of statements or paragraphs, and they've added this red in. So I'm thinking, well, that's a bit rude already, isn't it? Right? You know, the colour red, even the choice of red, is interesting, right? So I already knew it was going to be bad when I saw just a sea of red when I opened this email. But anyway, so let's get into it. And again, I won't read it all for purposes of time, but the bits that are important, I'll draw your attention to. So anyway, so the bit where I've started off with a wow and super sorry, settlement proposals, basically a total insult, right? So he's going. Now I say he, I've got to stop doing that because it could be a she, so, you know, it could be either. So it's an assumption, but let's just run with it. So they've put, I have known of Alienware from before they were bought out by Dell. They were basically the leading gaming laptop brand of the time, and there was a lot of outcry from the gaming community as Dell were basically the antithesis of the Alienware brand objectives. It turns out, it's like, what is it? He's giving me the history, right, of Alienware. It's like, this is almost like turning into a pissing contest already, right? Because it's like, don't tell me I don't know anything about Alienware, right? It's like, woomph. So it's like, well, easy, Tiger. So anyway, then it goes on the bit where I say about, you know, just so we're clear, you've proposed a cheap plastic, you know, bottom end gaming laptop, basically. Looks like you've tried to find the cheapest laptop with the name Alienware written on it. So the response to that is, the cheapest Alienware 17 available is an i5 based solution. We have chosen one that is considerably better than the original based on spec. As it stands, we could have used the i5 model because the original used a processor that is so out of date. He's saying that my Alienware, the processor in the M18X is so out of date, yeah, it can barely keep up with the modern i5s. So what he's saying is that the modern day i5 processor in the Alienware 17s would be better performance than the i7 processor that's in here, right? Now, we all know it depends on things like, you know, RAM, bus speeds. It depends on things like the architecture of the motherboard, chipsets. There's a lot of things that can determine speed other than just the CPU. But anyways, by the by, since mine's overclockable, and it was binned, which is, you know, where you pay extra for a very overclockable chip, basically. So anyway, he starts going on about benchmarks, right? He's going, the original benchmarks at 5,500, while the i5 used in the base 17 Alienware comes in at 9,400. So what he's trying to say is that, you know, it's going to be much better performance. Now, despite all of this, I actually, and it goes on, and there'll be a few bits I'll call out here, but just to let you know now, as a great bit of information for you in the future, when they find an equivalency to your item to replace it, it's not based on performance. I called them up. As soon as I got this, I called them up to confirm, right? I was like, is it about performance or is it about specification? Because when I phoned up to first get my insurance quote, I don't remember you asking me what my benchmarks were. Do you know what I mean? It was like, what's the processor, i7? How much RAM is it? 16 gig. What, do you know what I mean? It's like, so he's starting to make it all about benchmarks. So, and anyway, so where I got the bit here that says, sorry, there must have been some confusion as I wouldn't have needed to be paying out the extra for the £2,000 threshold thing, yeah? He's put here, the insurance policy states that replacements are based on specification of the original item, not value. So now it is about specification, not performance. So a minute ago, he's saying he could have given, just even the word, we could have just given you the i5, but we're being kind and giving you the i7. It's like, surely i7 is in the list of specifications, right? So that's a specification, i7. So if it's got a match specification, it doesn't matter that the modern day i7's a better performance than the old i7. It's an i7, right? So that's the specification. It's not like, I don't, you know, when I'm buying a laptop, I'm not asking what the benchmarks are, because you can run 12 different programs for benchmarks and get 12 different results, yeah? So it's completely arbitrary. But anyway, so it's going on about, it just keeps going on about performance. You know, it will easily outperform what you've already got, blah, blah, blah. It's like, and literally, page after page of just sea of red, yeah? And now, it gets onto the bit where I've highlighted about the PCMCIA port I've got on that. And he's almost like, what he's trying to tell me here is that, oh, it's obsolete technology, so you don't really need it anyway. If you're still using it, that's your fault. It's like, what? I'm like amazed, you know. Of course, I've spent my life in customer service as a consultant. I help businesses come up with their customer services protocols and things, right? So it's like, when I see this kind of stuff, I'm just like amazed. So anyway, I with the bit where I'm going on about, I send the link to the Area 51M saying that that's more like the equivalent than the 17, Alienware 17. He's put here, the Area 51M is an experimental laptop. Well, so was that, right? The Area 51M is an experimental laptop which shows Alienware trying to buck the trend for thin and light laptops that cannot be upgraded beyond storage and RAM. However, even at the time they unveiled it, Alienware were very upfront at the fact they might not be able to fill the promise. What the? It's like just a lecture about Alienware have no input on that fact. Just they have to state categorically they cannot guarantee any future upgrades. It's like, what is he going on about? Yeah? And it's just, I don't even know what this statement's supposed to even be. It's not actually dealing with the fact that it's called a desktop replacement, and so is the Area 51M, so is that. It just ignores that. So Anyway, then he tries to contest my dual graphics cards, but he doesn't know that I had mine as an import from America, so he's basing it on what the spec in the UK was. It's classic. And then I go on about the fact that it hasn't got RAID, and then I get a load of chunk of red text saying about RAID is effective because it provides double the channels of communication between storage. It's like, what? I don't need a lecture on what RAID is, you know, in terms of if he knew what I used to do as a business in terms of building custom PC systems. It's like, don't be telling me what RAID is, yeah? So anyway, and it goes on, and it's like, it's just contesting every part of it. And I'm thinking, this is just, you know, they're just trying to get away with as little as they possibly can. And what's more, I think what I was most amazed about, as well as just, you know, the rudeness, or I call it rudeness, but it is. It's like in terms of netiquette, yeah, you know, having good etiquette when it comes to sort of digital communications. Using red text is considered bad netiquette, right? Not to mention, at the end of it, there's no sign off. There's no like best regards, so and so. This is what I'm saying. It could be a male or female. I've got no idea, right? But there was no conclusion to say this is a secondary proposal that we've put forward based on, you know, sort of what you've put forward. None of that. It was just, you know, the red after each of my things, and then just blank, and then just ends with my own ending, right? It's like, wow. So of course I'm straight on the blower, and you know, I spent like another hour and a half, and they said to me, oh well, you'll just have to reply to that and state what I stated to them at the time. And so that's what I did. So then I put my own reply together, which you'll see next. You know, I can tell how long the video is just by how much tea I've got left in my cup. So I'm going to bang through this reply that I put to them, and then I'll get into what the conclusion was. But there's a few important bits in here. Just to let you know, though, as I mentioned, I did. The minute I got this one with a sea of red in it, I called them up straight away, and I did confirm with them that the equivalency match is based on specification, not performance, right? So I kind of knew that was going to be, I mentioned the fact that he's going on about benchmarks all over the place. So I put my response together based on what I had got from the insurance company when I called them up. Now, here's the interesting thing as well, is that all along the while, I'd had several conversations, and they'd never actually made it clear that I'd been talking to these technical consultant company. I hadn't been talking directly with my insurance company, and they hadn't even made that clear. So anyway, what I did, right, check out my reply. In response to their sea of red, all my replies I put in green, just to make a point, right? and again, I won't read it all, but there's a few bits in here which are important. So it's definitely, to me, at this point, it's turned into a bit of a war and a battle between me and this person, right? I mean, they're obviously the sort of person who doesn't like to be wrong. And it's a little bit like when you get into them nerd battles about PC versus Mac or Android versus iOS, you know, this kind of a thing. So it got quite interesting. But anyway, so when he's going on about this lecture about who Alienware is, when I've said you obviously unfamiliar with the Alienware series, he's obviously got an issue with that because he felt the need to actually do a lecture on it, right? So I put here, simply the fact you don't seem to know the difference between the M18x range of Alienware offerings and the M17 range of offerings proves you don't know what you're talking about, right? So where he's talking about, oh, basically, you know, the A17 is going to be better performance than your M18x, so what you're complaining about sort of thing in terms of benchmarks, is where I then do a list of all the things that are different about it, you know, because let's face it, guys, right? Even me having an Area 51M, yes, the performance is going to be faster, but I'm still kind of downgrading, right? First of all, the brand new Alienware Area 51M now is much less price point than what I had to pay for that when I bought that. And the reason being is because there is no, you know, first of all, it's a 17-inch screen, not an 18-inch screen, so I'm already getting a screen an inch less on the screen, right? There's no, and as I mentioned here, there's no Blu-ray drive, there's not even an optical drive at all, right? So you're saving the cost of that. Alienware is saving the cost of the optical drive when they're producing their system in manufacturing. There's no PCMCIA slots. There's like probably 10 slots on the side of this thing and then another 10 on that side, right? It's craziness. And there's none of that. So I make a point here that the only thing you're going on about is the fact that, oh, it's 1 inch difference in screen. That's the least of the differences, you know. No magnesium, I'm talking between the 17 that they're recommending. I'm saying there's no magnesium alloy case, there's no Blu-ray drive, there's no PMCIe slot, there's no RAID, there's no overclockable CPU, there's no desktop replacement features. I mean, basically, you know, no dual graphics cards. There's loads of differences in spec, right? So anyway, it goes on. I say about, you know, how he's comparing apples to oranges when he's going on about the current machines can outperform my M18X, right? But again, he's talking about performance again. So the point I make here is that here we go again, comparing apples to oranges, yeah? You do realise that a Tesla will outperform a Lamborghini in just about every performance metric, and it does, yeah? 0 to 60 of a Tesla is faster than a Lamborghini, right? So depending on what you're classing as performance, right? As performance is entirely subjective. It's up to the own individuals to what they think performance is. And so, but it's still the same specification. It's not, right? So again, you're trying to replace a Lambo with a Tesla and tell me it's okay because a Tesla goes faster, right? Irrelevant. They are not in the same class of vehicle any more than an M18X range is in the same class as the M17, regardless of performance or cost, right? So this is my case I'm putting forwards. And so again, I go on to say here about the specification doesn't match. It's not the same range or class, regardless of your perceived idea of what's outclassed or not, right? So my point here is that performance is entirely subjective, since if you're talking miles per gallon, right, as a performance metric, then yes, a Tesla is better performance, right? But equally, a tractor will outperform a Lamborghini in mud, right? Which is what I put here. A tractor performs better in mud than Lamborghini, right? But I didn't buy a tractor, and I don't need to go through mud. That's what I wrote here. But it's true, yeah? Because performance is, you can't base anything on performance because it's up to someone what they think performance is, right? And so it goes on, and again, I've put all this here. But anyway, cut a long story short, I get an email, probably about a day after I've sent this, and I've dealt with every one of his bits of red, basically, and, you know, there's some things here that there's just no way you can argue with, yeah? So I get an email a couple of days later from, I think it's from the BValue guys, yeah, these consultancies, saying that my claim has now been escalated to like some sort of supervisor, right? Some complaints division, okay? So now it's not even being dealt with by these guys. It's now gone back to Aviva, my actual insurance company. And so I've called Aviva up after realising it's been escalated to this complaint, and they said, oh, you're going to be assigned a complaints supervisor. And so they'll be in contact, right? So I'm thinking, oh man, here we go. You know, it's like, what does that mean? It's been escalated and it's now in, like, you know, some sort of complaints division. And so I was thinking, you know, this is just going to go on forever, you know, and all the time I can't use it for what I need to use it for. I've got all sorts of video work that I was trying to do that I now can't do. It's going to take forever, right? And even this video is going to take forever, yeah? So of course I can't be waiting around forever. And even when they do settle whatever they're going to settle, I then got to wait however long it's going to be until my new laptop arrives, right? And even when it arrives, I've got like 50 programs to put on it, you know, and things like this. So anyway, I get about 5 days after that, I get a phone call from this lady, and that phone call is the bit that I'll tell you about next. So I spoke to this lady on the phone, and a lovely lady she was. I think her name was Lorna, and she totally understood, you know, it had been like quite a few emails backwards and forwards. She could see on the account how many phone calls I'd made as well, so she knew it had been ongoing. And of course the notes on her system, every time I'd been calling in, they're kind of making notes on everything that I'm saying. And so of course an hour conversation, that's a lot of notes. And so she, poor woman, she's had to go through all this and trawl through this. Now what I didn't realise is that Aviva weren't aware of any of this. They'd been sent no communication from this BValue technical consultancy place, so they weren't aware of anything that had been going on. And when I explained about the fact, you know, they'd written it all in red and there was no sign off to say thank you very much, there was no Netiquette or nothing there, she was quite surprised and I think quite disappointed, and I don't think that they'd had complaints like that quite regularly. And I explained, you know, it's probably quite easy, isn't it? If you've just got something mainstream, you can swap it over. And I understand also that it's difficult for an insurance company like Aviva to be able to understand enough about, you know, to have enough consultants that understand enough detail about each industry. You know, because you could have the same with washing machines as well. You know, if a washing machine goes wrong, you've got the same problem of trying to find some kind of replacements. You'd have to know everything about washing machines as well. So it makes sense, you know, to portion that off to a subsidiary or maybe a third-party company to deal with that for you. And but she could see my frustration, and so of course she had to then go through the account and look at all the history of what had been talked about. And I gave her a little bit of a brief of all the green stuff that I'd sent through and what my argument was about the performance versus specification. And it wasn't my fault that the i7 today or whatever is a better performance than the i7 of yesterday. That's just Moore's law, yeah. And so she was pretty cool on the phone, and I thought, yeah, we're getting somewhere here. And so what happened was, she went off and she said, oh, you know, I'm going to need a couple of days to sort of investigate. I was like, okay, fair enough. And do you know what she did? She went to the lengths. She actually called Alienware themselves directly and asked them themselves, what is the equivalent today of an Alienware M18x? And do you know what Dell/Alienware told her? That's right, the Area 51M. So, which was great, yeah. I mean, literally about 4 hours ago, I got an email confirming that indeed they were going to be letting me have the Alienware Area 51M as a replacement, which for me, at least I knew that I'd been right along, right? So what a result, people, what a result. But, you know, imagine if I'd taken the first, we're talking £3,000 compared to the original 1,799. So that's a massive difference of what they would have kind of got away with, let's say, yeah? So absolute major result. So to let you guys know now, I'm going to be having a new Alienware Area 51M on its way, and pretty specced out as well, so that's good. Hopefully, you know, when that arrives, I'll be doing a full review of it and an unboxing and things like that. So that'll be exciting. And of course, it will also help me to bang out these videos far quicker, because the rendering, even on my custom water-cooled PC, when I'm rendering, it means I can't do much else. So I'm really looking forward to getting my workflow back in order, and I can bring you guys more and more videos. And at least, as I like to do, my video on a Thursday, which it's 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon now, so it's already going to be a struggle to get this out to you guys, but I wanted to bring this to you because it's important, and like I say, I'd never made an insurance claim before, so hopefully it's given you, shed some light on what to expect if you're going to go through this in the future. So thank you very much for staying with me and enjoying this rant, but I wanted to get it out there, and I hope some of you have actually taken something away from it. I'll do a follow-up video, of course, when I get official confirmation. So I'll do a follow-up video. But in the meantime, thank you very much to each and every one of you. Thank you to my subscribers as well. I really appreciate your support of the channel. And if you like the video, if you got anything out of it, please give it a like. And if you've had your own experiences, please put them in the comments for everybody else to learn from as well, because I think this is important that you know, we get what we're paying for when we're paying for our insurance. So thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Please like, share and subscribe.